Give me a thumbs up, Joshua, when we're ready. Okay, welcome everybody to the November 2020, once again, Zoom neighborhood meeting for the River Oak Community Organization. For those of you who showed up since we've made the last request, please put your name in the chat so we can record you for attendance, and also because how we're going to do the elections. But we're going to roll down through those and we'll introduce ourselves in that order. So usual order of business, quick introductions of who you are, where you live, how long you've been in the neighborhood, and then we'll go to the next person. So Dwight, you're number one. And if you're a board member.
Live just off Maxwell. I've been in the neighborhood 5 years.
Okay, Matt.
I'm Matt. I'm a ham radio operator here on Maxwell. I have a plan, most of a plan, that involves a hierarchy of communications all the way up from the ground level all the way up to the EOC. If people are interested in that, contact me.
Glad you're here for this meeting. Claire.
Hi, I'm Claire Strawn. I'm on Horn Lane, co-chair with John, and I've been living in this little house for 10 years now. And this is Mia. She likes to be talk in these meetings too.
Well, welcome, Mia. It's nice to have you here as well. Charlesy.
Hi, I'm Charlesy, and I live on Norman Avenue. I've been there for about 11 months. Very happy to have found this group. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm John Belcher. I'm the co-chair along with Claire, as she said. And I live on Rome Avenue, Rome Lane, which is off of Arbor. And I've been here 9 years. Rich, or Harry, excuse me, Harry.
Yeah, Harry Sanger, RRCO board member. I live on Rosewood Avenue, and it's just about a year that I've been here now.
Okay, Rich Hoyer.
Yes, this is Rich Hoyer. I'm on Hamilton, right where it joins with Lake, just north of Maxwell, and I've been here about 14 months.
Misty, our star tonight.
Oh, yes, Misty Frost, board member, and have been living on Corliss Lane for about over 4 years now. Kind of lost track, but yeah.
Mr. Spencer.
Hi, I'm Jan Spencer and a board member. I've lived here on Benjamin for 20 years.
Okay. Ed Farron.
I'm on the Bethel Board of Directors, and I'm the Northwest coordinator for the Community Emergency Response Teams. And I've lived here for about a year.
Okay, Joshua, the man who makes all these meetings happen.
Okay, I'm Joshua Keelis, board member, and I have been living over on Fairway Drive for a few years now.
Okay, and as we work our way down to the end of the list, if you haven't signed on in the chat, please do so. Pat, Carlene, and Snowy.
Hi, I'm Carlene, and I've lived here for 40 years, and Snowy's been here since February. His sister doesn't like Zoom very much.
And I've been here longer than that.
Longer than Snowy, anyway. Brenda.
I'm Brenda Wills, and I live in the Echo Apartments, and I've been here about 18 months, and I'm on the Social Justice Committee.
Thank you. Jackie and Andrew.
Hey, we are Andrew and Jackie Worcester, and we live on Jane Street off of Hilliard, and we've been in the neighborhood for about 6 years.
Okay. Kate and Ross.
Hi there, I'm Kate, and my husband Ross is not here. I do have a cat, though, Tamlin, and we have lived on Rossmore and Nadine for about 2 years now, and I keep meaning to check out the meetings and finally made it tonight. So, hello.
Deal, welcome. Welcome. Lisa.
Hi, I'm Lisa Loveson. I live on Walnut Avenue, and I've been here for 14 years.
Okay, is there anybody who we have missed? Lynn, sign in.
Lindsay, you have to introduce yourself.
Oh, I was trying to unmute without knocking my phone off its precipitous, I'm Lynn Lockhart. I've lived on LK for 25 years or so. I'm on the River Road Board.
Great, thank you. I think that's us all. So we now go to.
We're missing Lindsay, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, Lindsay, forgive me.
Oh.
Hi, I'm Lindsay Davis and I live on Howard and I've lived there for 2 years.
I'm gonna put your
Lindsay and
name
Lynn,
in
can
the,
you sign in on the chat, please?
Okay.
I'm doing it for you. Lindsay Lewis? I'm sorry, you're muted, Lindsay.
Lindsay Davis.
Davis, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Got it. Okay. So, any announcements? I'll start with one, just a quick reprise of what I put in the newsletter about the decision on Howard Meadows subdivision. The neighbors had requested that
You're closer.
the city make sure that the fill that they were putting on the site was still permeable after they had done so. And basically, as I interpret the response from the planning director, not the planning director, but the hearings official, is that we believe the dirt will be permeable and we have no way to make sure that it is. So there it is. It's going to happen. Today, I just got a notice that there is a adjustment review requested by North Eugene's new high school. They want to have shorter loading lanes and less distance between some of their lanes. They're going from 7 lanes to 6, and they're asking for some relief to the standards. So if you have any questions about either of those, please email me and I'll be happy to share them with you. They're both relatively minor, I guess. So that's the land use report. Other announcements? Yes, Claire.
I put this in the reminder newsletter message, but Egan Warming Centers is opening and they have this, I think this week, maybe tomorrow night is the training. And they have fewer places to put people. Does everybody know what Egan Warming Centers is? It's where homeless people can go to not freeze.
The temperatures are below 25.
Yeah. So anyway, there's a lot of COVID precautions and training that are now involved, and they're of course limited by volunteers. So if you have any interest in that, there is information in the newsletter that I sent out on Saturday.
Great, and they're hurting for people because many of their volunteers are in a COVID
risk group,
susceptible age, so they need help.
Yeah.
Other announcements? Jan. By the way, raise your hand if you have an announcement. Yeah, you got it.
I haven't had the meeting yet.
Yeah, he's asking for announcements.
Oh, okay. Oh, I guess I could do
I'll
that.
get you next, Pat.
Am I on?
No.
Jan, then you.
Hi, I want to mention that I'm making a Zoom presentation on November 18th. That's actually a Wednesday, November 18th. And it's going to be a slideshow presentation. I've been doing a series of presentations and 5 of them are on YouTube now, but this one on the 18th is going to be wonderful examples about people, individuals, groups, organizations that, as I like to frame it, as previews of a preferred future, as in living more within ecological boundaries and social, political, economic responsibility, in contrast to much of what we experience every day. So what I'm going to do is put that info in the chat so you'll know when that is and what the Zoom login information is as well. I'm done.
Thank you, sir. Yes, Mr. Riley, and then Harry.
Yes, the neighborhood engagement team is going to have a Zoom meeting with St. Vinny's with Kristen and Michelle at 2 o'clock Wednesday afternoon. And they're going to update us on the progress of the Iris Place project. One of the things they'll be looking at is the car share and bike share program. And there's some other topics, but I'll get that information to you after the meeting. And anyway, just an opportunity for an update. It's been a couple months at least since we last met, so it'll be good to find out more detailed information.
Okay. For those of you who may not know, Irish Place is the low-income housing project that's being built just north of the Dairy Mart on River Road, on the east side. Harry.
So I had a couple of transportation related announcements. Claire had included the Vision 20 information in the last newsletter. If you are interested, the city has signs available to encourage slower speeds in your neighborhood. And then the Eugene Active Transportation Committee has some seats open that beginning in January. The committee is open to anybody within the urban growth boundaries of Eugene, and I'll post a link to that information in the chat.
Great. Other announcements. I have one to make, and that is we anticipate to make a presentation to the membership at our next general meeting on a proposed charter rewrite for our neighborhood charter. The gist of what we're trying to do here is that right now, all of our rules and such are in our charter. The charter has to be approved by the city council. So what our intent to do is to take those pieces of the current charter that have to be in the charter and resubmit those to the city for approval and move those things that don't have to be in the charter into bylaws so we can more easily modify those in the future as any other organization could do just within itself. So we'll get that information out to you, and we'll have that discussion about the proposed charter changes. But it's important that we tell you this a month in advance because that's how the charter gets amended. Any questions about that? Yes, Claire, you're muted.
Okay. So are we going, well, how are we going to make the draft available to folks prior to the next meeting?
After the board has met and agreed on what we want to submit, we'll get it out there. Probably in the e-news.
Okay. And there'll be a link to the whole thing for you to look at. All right.
Anything else before we turn it? Oh, Lynn.
I went and picked up the limit of 20 is plenty signs. I have 10 of them.
Great.
So if anyone, I will bring it to your house if you tell me where that is. Maybe it could go in the chat. I don't know.
A little bit of background on that as well, if I may. The city has gotten authority from the legislature to reduce the speeds on local streets to 20 miles per hour. Unfortunately, most of the streets in River Road are not city streets, they're county streets. So while technically the speed limit may not be 20, you can put the signs out and try to fool people anyway.
They did not care that I am in the county either. I told them that and they said, we don't care. How many do you want?
Good deal. And Carrie's in charge of working hopefully with legislature to make it so that our county streets can be done the same way. Not putting words in your mouth. Okay, anything else? Missy, we're turning it over to you. And don't forget to ask for a note taker.
I got notes for you, Misty.
Sorry, I was like unmuting and then, did I share my screen already? Probably.
Yeah.
I did? Okay.
Yeah.
But you can see probably the boxes of you too, right? Or no? Never mind. Okay. Well, thank you all for being here. It's exciting to see so many folks interested and being involved in our community work. And what a time to get involved, I must say. There's no shortage of disasters anywhere you look. So I feel that this work is timely, and I know many of you also feel the same. Again, a little bit about myself. I am a board member, and I'm the chair of the newly formed emergency preparedness and evacuation team. I want to state first off that I'm not an expert. I don't have any formal training, but I am and have been a community organizer here in our community for a long time, mostly focusing on environmental justice issues, housing issues, social justice issues, farm workers, labor. So I've had my hand in many different issues, and it all kind of comes together with emergency preparedness and evacuation. Okay, let's see. I'm going to move to our next slide. And I wouldn't be anything without the team. So I would like each one of the current volunteer team members to introduce yourselves and your interest in volunteering in this particular work, please. And I'm going to call on Harry to go first.
Sure. So again, my name's Harry Sanger. I think being prepared for an emergency is important because if you wait for the emergency, it's too late. We see more and more things going on in the world every day, whether it's weather related or social related. I think Jan's got a lot more to speak on that, but it's important to be prepared for anything that could come our way. And you all are my neighbors, and so I think we're the immediate group that we have to rely on in this situation.
Thank you. John, do you want to tell us why you want to be involved?
Well, this is an issue that we've tried to work on for years, and I think it helps to have recently been made aware of the need for this project, and hopefully this will be the time when we get it all together and get our neighborhood prepared for whatever disaster faces us. We know we've had a fire. We know that we're going to have an earthquake. Now's the time to prepare.
Lynn, thank you.
Disaster preparedness is an issue that unites all of us. It cuts across political beliefs, social groups. So I am passionately interested in neighborhood outreach and getting to know more of my neighbors better. So it's the perfect issue as far as I'm concerned. And I love the idea of like neighborhood pods where we have centralized, like organized ways to get information. So.
Yes, more on that later.
Later, yes. That's a teaser.
Just a teaser.
Teaser.
Pat. Is he muted? I can't see him. Okay. Lisa.
Hi. I missed the first meeting, but I'm a community organizer. And I regularly serve our homeless and fragile food insecure communities on the ground. And the last fire made me critically aware of how unprepared we were on a county and city level to respond to an emergency. So I'm very concerned about what we can do to be better prepared for these kinds of things, both with communications and with connecting with other organizations in a cohesive way so there's not duplication of effort, but also in being able to reach out to people for emergencies, especially with some of our fragile senior citizens who might need help or people who have health risks who are going to need assistance in an emergency. So I think this is super important.
Thank you. Chelsea.
Well, it will kind of become clearer in my presentation. But I've lived through a major fire and lost my home in near Paradise. So when this committee came to my attention, I just knew I had to get involved. And having witnessed the holiday farm fire and feeling so confused by what to do in this community, that made it just even more essential that I find out and get involved and help.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you. And yes, Charles will share her story in a few moments. But how about Jackie?
Hey, yeah, my husband and I have completed CERT training a couple of years ago after we moved to Oregon, and we've experienced some minor climate emergencies or environmental emergencies in our current home, and I definitely know that our street and our neighborhood could have been prepared a little bit better. So I'm excited to figure out how we can get that organized and get people help where they need it.
Awesome. DW? Maybe not. How about Pat? Pat, are you ready? Okay, maybe they'll chime in later.
Okay, I'm back.
Oh, okay.
I think it's important that we have some sort of network. So if something happens, the only thing that I can see that would probably affect River Road area is if one of the dams up the river were breached. But it would be very important, something like that happened, that we have some sort of network to notify neighbors and get them to safety.
And
Thank
Misty,
you.
did you see in the chat, Matt Albertson was asking if he got skipped there. Matt, are you there?
I can't see my chat, so thank you. Anyone that sees something in the chat, please let me know.
Yeah, Matt's on with us.
Okay, Matt.
Give me some context here.
Oh, are you, I'm sorry if I missed your name as far as wanting to be a volunteer in our emergency and preparedness evacuation team. So we're asking for just let us know, why you want to be involved in this work.
Well,
if you are a volunteer.
It's hard to say exactly.
Matt, you're a bit low. Could you get your mic closer to you?
Can you hear me now?
A little bit better.
A little bit better. Okay. It's hard to say exactly why I want to volunteer, but why even need a reason? I happen to have a pretty good plan whipped up for people to be able to communicate to a next tier in a hierarchy.
There you go.
And communicate to local ham radio operators who can get that up the next tier and and to the EOC eventually. So that there's some, dare I say, garbage filtration and summarization.
Thank you.
Yes.
And radio definitely is on my radar to talk about later. Not in this presentation exactly, but I'm glad you're here because you're definitely on my radar as far as helping people communicate.
If you have any questions about radio, then go ahead and contact me. That's what I'm here for.
Well, you should just keep coming to these meetings. So.
Okay, should we move on?
So the next on the slide is what role do neighborhood organizations play in emergency preparedness and evacuation?
Misty, did we skip Jan?
No.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate that. When I look at evacuation and emergency preparedness and resilience, I would ask a question what are we trying to be resilient about? What are we evacuating for? Why are we wanting to be prepared for what? And those are all good questions. And when you think about fires and climate change, perhaps social unrest, people who don't have homes, just so many social, economic, political, environmental issues, I see our economic system as being a common denominator in just about everything. And that doesn't mean that people shouldn't be responsible as well. You might have heard the term, how many planet Earths would it take for the entire world to live like the average American? It's about 5, something like that. We're over consuming, and I see overconsumption and careless consumption as being a huge reason why we've got all these problems and we're talking about all this in the first place. So my contribution, my thoughts are about downsizing lifestyles. Our high consuming affluent lifestyles are at the root of many of these problems. So maybe we'll have some more content about this particular issue as time goes on. We really need to, but I'll leave it at that for right now.
Thank you, Jan. Thank you. That being said, what role can we as a community organization play in all of this? And I know River Road, RRCO has worked on many issues, exactly as folks have said already, resiliency, planting gardens, food safety, new housing in our community to house folks. All of these are right at the top, the issues within emergency preparedness and evacuation, and how do communities deal with disasters in general and communicate effectively. I just wanted to briefly go over how neighbors pretty much played a role upriver in the Mackenzie fire and the holiday campfire. And I've talked to various people and folks that were up there in the fire. They lost power immediately, lots of confusion, and volunteer firefighters that lived within the community itself were the first responders getting folks out as soon as possible. And they pretty much had to designate themselves where they were evacuating to. Nobody told them where to go. No big agency told them. They decided as a group where to go and what the next steps were. So this slide, and I'm repeating myself just a little bit to emphasize that volunteers and local neighborhood folks really, when it comes down to it, in the moment of a disaster, we are the ones that are there in the moment. And so I just want to stress the importance of this work, being prepared, providing our neighbors and our neighborhood with ample resources ahead of time, let them know where to find these resources ahead of time, train folks as much as possible ahead of time, and already have a set plan ahead of time when things do happen, as we know that they will. And we have our neighbor, Charlesy, who is going to share her story. Charlesy, would you mind taking over?
Thank you very much, Misty. Yeah, Misty asked me, I think it was in the middle of the night, in an email that I read when I woke up in the middle of the night, that she was hoping I might make some comments about my experience. And the Paradise Campfire, which took place, interesting to me because I had not realized this, which is a good sign of healing, I think. But yesterday was the 2-year anniversary of that in Paradise, California. At the time I lived in Magalia, which is a kind of a small unincorporated town on the outskirts of Paradise, separated by a canyon. Magalia had only still does have only 2 roads out, which plays a big role in this whole evacuation scenario that I experienced. Unlike Paradise, which had 0 forewarning of the disaster that hit them very early in the morning on the 8th, our community, which was blissfully ignorant and unaware of what was going on in Paradise, had quite a bit more time to get ready and leave. We could see smoke in the morning, and some of us started getting text messages and voicemail messages that it was recommended that we get prepared to evacuate. But we had no idea of the devastation going on in Paradise, just a few miles away. And then quickly the power grids ceased to work, and the cell towers ceased to work, and our ability to communicate with the outside world was lost. There was one neighbor that had some form of a ham radio, but she didn't seem very able to get any useful information for us. Some of the neighbors and I got together in the center of a cul-de-sac to talk about what rumors we were hearing, what information we had, and what our plans for evacuation were. I knew I wanted to get out in an early evacuation timeframe. I wasn't inclined to want to stick it out and see how it developed. But some of the older residents who had lived through this kind of thing before, they thought, we're going to just stay there, and they were pretty confident it would blow over and that the problem would be solved. In fact, all of us lost our homes. And the emergency crews that were spread extremely thin, given the fact that most were totally absorbed in Paradise with the devastation that was occurring there. They had to go in 3 times to get some of the people out who stubbornly would not leave. We had been assured by PG&E. We knew that the weather conditions were going to be extreme, that the canyons created wind gusts of 180 miles an hour, or not 180, but 80 or 100 miles an hour. And we were assured by PG&E that the grid would be shut down, not to worry. They were in control of everything, but they didn't do that. And the old and poorly maintained equipment failed, and the inferno was the result. When I got the recommended evacuation, I started to prepare to get my pets in my car and gather some things. I did not feel panicked because I had prepared, and I was sort of in shock and automatic. I believed, and others believed, that the fire was at quite a distance still. When I got in my car and drove a couple of blocks away, however, I was very shocked to see that there was a black wall, an enormous black wall of smoke with flames that I could see probably on the other side of one of the canyons. And it was frighteningly close. It took me hours to get to the main road, which normally would have been a 5-minute drive at most. And I learned then that the only route out was, because of the road closures toward Paradise, the only route out was the 62-mile 2-lane highway that had recently been paved, and that would take us into the forest more and quite a bit farther north on a route that would end us up in Chico, which normally would be about a 30-minute drive. It took 6 hours. When I got to Chico was inundated with tens of thousands of evacuees. It was covered with dark black smoke and facing its own threat of forest fire. I saw people I knew were likely homeless coming out of the forests along the way. It was kind of known up there that there were a lot of people living off the land and off the grid, and they were on foot. I don't know how they ever got out. There were not that many emergency evacuation personnel that I saw, I think because of the preoccupation with the disaster in Paradise. And volunteer citizens seem to be stepping up, thankfully, to direct traffic. I can't emphasize enough how preparedness and rehearsal was critical in saving my life and my pets' lives. And here are some of the things I had done. I had been paralyzingly afraid of fire and the risk of fire and wanted to avoid even looking at the issue, and eventually realized I had to start attending Fire Safety Council presentations. And once I did, I found so much help there and so many concrete things I could do to get ready. I started my plan and started packing dough bags and crates in my car for the pets. I had enough supplies in my car at all times to last several days if necessary. I drove the 62-mile route I mentioned, which was ultimately the route that saved my life. And that eliminated a lot of fear and resistance I had. I rehearsed my process in my mind, and I kept my gas tank always full. I prearranged evacuation destinations. I contacted friends to make sure they could take me and my pets in an emergency. I had cash on hand. I had fire insurance. I had made copies of important documents, scanned them, and had them on flash drives, which I chucked into my purse and my go bag and so on. And all of those documents proved to be very important ultimately. Many people aren't in their homes when an evacuation occurs. So thinking about that in a plan is really important. What do you do if you're at work and you can't get back to your house? My recommendations, based on my experience, if you believe in insurance and care to get compensated for any loss like that, is to really understand your policy, because the path of arguing with insurance companies after the fact is not a pleasant one. I would recommend having evacuation support groups, and maybe that's what was referred to by the pods, but I think people that are similarly situated who you can use as support and get ideas from and encourage one another is really a good way, would be a good way for me. Frequent community emergency preparedness workshops are great, where you have displays and people you can talk to and brainstorm and problem solve with. It's really important to have easy to understand maps of evacuation routes that are understandable to people or newcomers to the community like me. I found that in the recent holiday farm fire, that listening to the news was almost useless, because the places they were talking about and much of the information they were sharing required a deep knowledge of the area. Many of my Eugene neighbors and friends at the time of that fire, the holiday farm fire, felt that we were very safe here in the River Road neighborhood, that it would never touch us. And I know I will never believe that. I will never trust that, having experienced fire moving so fast that it was beyond comprehension. And we saw that in Oregon also just a couple of months ago that urban areas can and do ignite. I agree with the premise of this committee, as I've said before, that planning and preparedness is a really important defense, regardless of what the threat ends up being. It's likely that we are going to experience that again. Anyway,
Thank you.
I'm gonna stop there. Thank you.
Charles C. I want to emphasize your comment just now about an urban setting not, being in danger of a wildfire. And I often hear, well, those folks that live in the mountains or those folks that live, they should know that they are at risk because they're in the forest area. So naturally, a forest fire should be on their radar, and they should be ready. But you're saying that that's not the case, that those fires can spread to the larger urban areas?
Yeah, and increasingly, I think we are becoming aware that our housing structures are very flammable. I'm very familiar, for instance, with Santa Rosa area in California, where there was a huge and awful fire a couple of years ago. It just isn't the case that we're safe if we have cement and more space between fewer trees. I mean, and I look around me and I see, dead fuel that is piling up in certain areas that in a fire situation could really get out of control. And I just think people need to not, I mean, if it were an earthquake, for instance, we'd have to be equally prepared.
Sure, absolutely.
So it isn't always going to be about fire, but fire can spread that fast. And I think that in the town of Talent and in that area.
Phoenix.
Yes, Phoenix.
Yeah, a lot of devastating images have us all pretty, I guess, traumatized, or maybe some of us want to be in, we just don't want to face that what's happened. I mean, we've all spent so much time up the Mackenzie on our weekends going hiking or fishing, and so many of us I know have not gone up there. And I did go up there a couple of weeks ago, and yeah, it looked like a war zone and awful. So with that being said, what could we do about this? So I work for 211 Info. I didn't know anything about 211 Info when I applied for the job and I started working there, and I was just amazed. They are a referral. They started out actually as a crisis line and then grew to be a referral agency. And now, after Hurricane Katrina, the federal government got in so much trouble and realized that a centralized place where folks could call for information that was accurate was very much needed. And so 211 was designated as the non-emergency helpline across the United States. If there's a 211, then generally they are designated to receive calls for information. I was on the phones from Monday night when the smoke rolled into Eugene for a whole week. I probably only slept like 5 hours that whole time. But this that you see on your screen is 24 hours, September 10th. And it kind of shows the amount of calls. 204 to me didn't sound like that exciting, but once I got on the phones and I realized how long each phone call took and how much time it took to get folks the information they needed, 204 actually results in 650 referrals. That's kind of what those numbers are referring to. And you can see Lane County had 37. And I'm going to switch to the next one. This breaks down the categories of what people were calling about. And so I'm showing you all this, not to show off that 211 is super bad or cool or whatever, but to show you that what people were calling about. What are our community members going to be calling about during an evacuation? And I'll just emphasize, and I'll refer to 211 later as a partner, because they will be called on in the future whenever we have a disaster. They're the ones compiling all of the information to give out to the public, anyone that calls. And so part of my job was to search Lane County for all the possible resources that these folks were calling about, find those resources so people that were calling in were able to get accurate information.
Misty, I can't read what these ones are. Can you highlight a couple of them? Not all, what are the big ones?
Okay,
can't read the
sorry.
slide.
It's not, okay. The most sought after are evacuation centers, disaster centers, basically like the location at where they are, and fire location information is the other one. Evacuation orders. So from personal experience, I was on the phone many times with seniors who didn't have a cell phone or didn't know how to use it in the way that it would be useful. And they had to, like Multnomah County, Lane County, we have an alert system that we were broadcasting, sign up for alerts, but you needed to have a cell phone and you needed to have an email address and you had to create an account. And what I heard from folks that were calling in is like, I'm kind of freaked out and panicking, and the thought of having to create an account and remember a password and all of these things, I just can't do it, so they just didn't do it because they didn't feel like they could. It was just like, okay, I'm going to walk you through this. And I helped several seniors come up with, passwords that they were never going to use, just so I couldn't sleep at night knowing that I had not signed them up, because I could see based on their address that they were in a level 2, about, a few miles from a level 3, so it was like, I can't let this person off the line unless I know that they are aware, as much as possible. And I swear those 10 seniors that I happened to talk with, I was checking their addresses on our mapping system all the time to make sure that, they hadn't changed into a level 3. And I'd have to notify the sheriff. So another thing that I'll bring up is the lack of transportation. Communication between agencies was a major problem. And these are some of the things that I hope to work on in our group. So this next one, I started highlighting. So our phone operators, when they're filling out, because we try to track reasons for calling. So I started highlighting ones that I thought were relevant or like most important. And you know what? I'm like, all of them are important. Every single one of these calls. I'm not sure if you can read them. I can read them clearly. I'm sorry if some folks can't read them clearly. But what really stands out to me of what our community is a variety of things, but the groups really kind of pop out. And I can share this information later if folks would like to take a closer look at this information. But the gaps, the major ones were seniors, Black, Indigenous, people of color, non-English speakers, houseless, homeless, low income, and I should put youth in there as well. And this, having worked in environmental justice and social justice issues for many years, I'm like, these are the same groups, you know. It's like, gosh darn it. And we all know this horrific stories of Hurricane Katrina and Maria, and how you know, poor communities of color, poor communities are the last on the government's radar as far as helping them get out of a disaster. And my gosh, I can't sleep knowing that, you know, maybe our community over on this side isn't going to be a major, going to be one of the communities that emergency response teams that are going to be severely limited in personnel are going to take, you know, all that much effort to pay attention to when, say, the South Hills are on fire, et cetera, et cetera. So I just strongly feel that we have a duty to organize this work and move forward. And we don't have everything hashed out, obviously, but I want to emphasize that equity and inclusivity is at the foundation of all of this work, and that we will be working with our social justice committee to bring voices to the table, bring BIPOC leaders and other disenfranchised groups' voices to the table, so we aren't blindsided at the end of the day. If we do have a disaster, there, you know, we have to, I want to make sure that we cover all of our people equally, and everybody's important. Moving on. So I have been very impressed with all of the work that has already been done in Lane County. This is just a list of some of them. We have been working with Active Bethel citizens, and thank you, Ed, for being here. I'm going to ask Ed to talk a little bit about what Active Bethel is planning. I know we have a meeting coming up soon too, but I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about CERT and what you're doing over at Active Bethel Citizens. I can't see him on my screen. Is he still here? Ed Farron.
Yes, I'm still here.
Hi, thank you.
Oh, you mean go now?
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind.
Oh, well, we're just starting up, but I think the next meeting we'll talk about this, the one that's this Saturday. We'll talk about some training opportunities on the FEMA, you know, the Federal Emergency Management Agency website, which has an online training program, and there's just a ton of training you can take. And then there's eWeb is going to drill, has already drilled like 5 or 6 wells at schools in the Eugene area, and we need to take the training on the FEMA website for the distribution of water at these wells in case of emergency. And so that's kind of just a short term. And then the long term, I think, and then CERT is going to have start training again in person on, I believe, next March of 2021, and then in fall of 2021. And so, but really, we're just kind of starting to get off the ground here.
Yeah, thank you for being here. And I hope the goal is to partner, hopefully, with Active Bethel to join forces on our similar issues that we come up with later on. We can pinpoint some. So further in my presentation, I give examples of certain actions that we can collaborate on and do and work on. So I'm pleased that you're here, and thank you. And so I've been also meeting with several of these other groups. This wonderful woman, Heather, she's the mega star of Whitebird and COAD, and she has shared Southeast Neighbors. They have already a plan, evacuation emergency plan that she's shared with me. So I will use her or their plan as a template to come up with our own. Because again, I'm looking for everybody's input and before moving on and just making decisions. So I want this to be a group decision. And I'm also waiting to get in touch with the NAACP and CAUSA and Centro Latinoamericano and other BIPOC-led organizations that should be have a seat at the table as well, as far as what we ensure gets done. And so our current proposed projects, some brainstorming that our team has done over the last couple weeks, is a community outreach survey. We've been talking about doing an outreach survey for over a year, well over a year. But boy, this is sure even gives us more ammunition to get out there and get going with this. And Harry, would you please tell us a little bit about your beautifully colored map that you've shared with us today?
Yeah, so we were talking about, the idea of kind of pods within River Road to allow us to kind of concentrate, into a specific area. And, there's a program called Mapping Your Neighborhood where they actually recommend, groups of about 10 to 15 neighbors or the area you could canvass in an hour. I think what we drew up here is a little bit bigger than that, but the idea we were thinking is maybe, we could have a designated point of contact in each one of these areas. And it doesn't have to be specifically what was drawn here. I just kind of looked at what made sense geographically, depending on the concentration of population within each of these zones. It might change a little, but, I guess, we'd be asking for kind of a leader in each one of these areas. I myself am in the purple, kind of right in the middle there, but it's just a starting point to kind of visualization of our neighborhood and, who you would lean on in the event of an emergency.
So thank you. Oh, any more questions? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
And
Claire
yeah, sorry. Go ahead, Claire.
Well, I'm thinking to the city's map your neighborhood program that we tried a couple years ago. And that was more of a decentralized approach where maybe the 10 neighbors around where you live take the initiative to get to know each other, inventory their assets, and be the ones who check on each other in an emergency. I'm wondering, and this looks like a bigger chunk, a bigger endeavor. I'm wondering if you'd considered a less centralized approach to this problem.
And that's definitely something that we'll bring up in our next meeting. Yeah. Any critiques or questions, please share them.
I'd suggest you figure out why Map Your Neighborhood initiative that we started, it didn't take off.
Okay.
People were really excited at the meeting and volunteered to be the co-person in their block, but then nothing ever really happened from it. And so that was frustrating. It'd be good to know how we can do that differently.
Well, just speaking from my own personal experience and canvassing and surveying, it's hard work. It's definitely hard work.
Yeah.
And, if someone could figure out a way to get people to fill out surveys on their own, they'd be a millionaire.
Well,
I
one of the core issues though was that it was not, people didn't want to say what their personal assets were and didn't want it be unless it was a very face-to-face relationship building exercise rather than someone walking around with a clipboard and inventorying the neighborhood. You know, I
But
think there's some issues there.
Claire, you asked why it died, though. I think the decentralized works great if everybody's already on board. If people
Yeah.
are not, that's why you kind of need a central leader. If we had 8 pod leaders, and this idea came about because Lynn kind of volunteered to take care of her immediate area. But if we had 8 pod leaders that centralized the decentralization, and you could rally the troops within your specific area, just
Right.
it's all about engagement, right? And that was the idea of the survey, is how do we engage our neighbors? So
Yeah, I agree, Harry.
This is an
Yeah.
offshoot of that discussion. I see a lot of hands up. I think Lisa's was first.
Yeah, so I just finished this for one of my other hats is I'm chair of House District 13 for the Democratic Party, and I don't want to make this partisan about this, but one of the things we faced this year, in whether you're Republican or Democratic, in getting out the vote was the fact that we couldn't canvass. So we used a program this year called Neighborhood Leader, which you asked someone to take 35 of their neighbors. And we found this to be amazingly successful to do that. So if you took this area, because I'm looking at this, I happen to know how many households this is because we've written postcards to most of them.
Yeah.
And those chunks are too big, but if you designated a leader for each one of those geographical areas and then broke that down into people who would be responsible in taking on 35 neighbors, it's literally like part of your street, and you could probably handle that. And it does take some investment to find that number of people who'd be able to do it. But the mapping tools are there, and people are willing to say, okay, I could check on the neighbors on my street and be responsible for coordinating that. But when you give them more than that, it's too much.
Yeah.
So, I've got some insight into how to break that down, but you definitely would want like neighborhood coordinators at the bigger level and then leaders in each area. And there are people who have a lot of resources who are afraid of telling people what resources they have because they don't want to be cleaned out in the event of an emergency. So I think there's some balance in how we identify what assets are available to people.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, this would be purely volunteer. Every door that we knock on, whether they want to be, one of the leaders or not, we would hand them the information that would be how to locate. So the second thing on here is to create a database of assets. Assets means like where's this emergency water well? Where is it located? Where do we evacuate to in an emergency, in a flood, or if the lights go out and our cell phones all die? Who is willing to let their neighbor use their landline phone to make a phone call if the landlines are still up, right? So just sharing, whoever would like to share that information, we would hold that information in this database. And this goes with businesses like veterinary clinics that would, perhaps offer a discount, or folks that have a big piece of property that would hold a couple of dogs for someone. Just that kind of organizing, so it's a little less intense in the moment and people know where to go. And we're going to create a website. Take a deep breath, Misty. Create a website off our River Road. A web page off of our website that contains links to CERT certification dates, FEMA trainings that people can take during these cold, dark nights. We can learn how to, we can get all of our certifications out of the way. And then as the weather gets better and hopefully COVID becomes a thing of the past, start getting together in person and practicing preparedness, pass out information on, for example, 211 is offered and is very excited that neighborhood organizations are becoming more activated, and they are eager to provide us with all kinds of material and information that we can share on our website and provide workshops as well. So there's a 3-day, should have a 3-day, I think it's called the pillowcase, full of things under your bed with information. And then 3 weeks, right? So 3 days and 3 weeks. So I hope to provide those lists and information on our website that people can access, but also hand out as we go door to door with our survey. And like you all said, those chunks on the map are humongous, yes. And I spent over a year canvassing in West Eugene a couple years ago, and it took me over a year to just do 600. And I had, again, it's really hard work. Not everybody wants to go door to door. Nobody really wants, who knows, we got yelled at a few times because we were just knocking on the door. Like, people are kind of freaked out about strangers walking up to their homes. But I tell you what, the few folks that I was able to, talk with one-on-one have become more engaged in their communities and more interested in the issues that were brought up in the survey, and were empowered to get more involved and meet their neighbors. So I know this is going to be a huge project, but I'm down for it, and steady as it goes. We don't have to come up with all of the answers right away, and it'll take some time to develop our survey. I would like everybody to be involved, and we'll share our questions with all of you to get your blessing before we publish our survey and hit the streets. We hope to involve schools, high schools. I know seniors have to put in so many hours of community service. Maybe we can entice them to get involved in canvassing their own neighborhood and doing these surveys. And also, speaking of schools, one of the things that I hope to partner with our other partners, other organizations, is to suggest to 4J and other school districts that offering emergency preparedness and evacuation certifications to seniors and young people who will have to deal with this climate change, whatever you want to call it, more intensity over the course of their life. And so I feel that also, as a parent, I feel that I want my daughter to have all of the tools possible for survival, whatever that may be. And if our high schools are providing even something that can put on their resume, urge our young people to become more active in that, so they are prepared, and possibly be, so that we have a whole team of young, strong people ready to help us in the case of an emergency. They're prepared and knowledgeable. That's one of various ideas. Another idea is having a neighborhood-wide fire drill and event where we communicate, hopefully via radio and television, and get the word out that our neighborhood is going to have a fire drill, and just have a mess of it, because that's really what we need to see and work through. So the traffic jams, the miscommunication, the not knowing, so we can figure out where things went wrong. And of course, this is working with our police and other emergency agencies. So this is obviously a long time in the works, but I feel that it would bring our community together. Afterward, we can have an event, a big event of some kind at a park or with lots of resources and information and workshops and talk about what we learned during our fire drill and how we can make it better and work out the kinks. Because as folks have said, it takes a couple of disasters for a community to work out what went wrong, right? And so, and in our waiting for somebody to die before we do anything type thing, I hope that we can avoid that as much as possible and just take the bull by the horns and get some done. And I know that there's a lot of people, I can't see the chat, but I know there's a lot of people with some great ideas, and I'm looking forward to hearing them. I'm not sure where we are on time though, if John or Claire.
About 15 minutes.
Okay, so we have about 15 minutes if folks want to go down the chat, if there's anyone that would like to share thoughts, concerns, ideas. We're taking notes, and I will send out, and please, if you would like to volunteer, drop your email in the chat and I will add you to our volunteer list, and we will get together in the next couple weeks to start on our mission statement and our overall goal, so we can get that down and get to work. But what do folks have to say? I'm curious.
Mr. Jan had his hand up.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think Missy has a lot of good things to say there. Of course, we can't cover everything in one meeting, and we haven't.
Right.
But it's a perfect tool, the whole idea of preparedness, because I think more people are concerned about this with the virus, with climate change. We're in kind of an unsteady period of history, and I wouldn't expect it to go away anytime soon, really. But talk about an issue, a topic, preparedness and resilience, that could really bring a lot of different people together. And I love the idea of engaging other organizations, and particularly kids in school, to be a part of this.
Yeah.
So I think any kind of a campaign should be really clearly identified. I mean, this is going to take time, I think, like as Misty is sort of suggesting, to come up with a sort of a set of kind of plans and actions people can take, because not every disaster is created equal. Some, like if the dams fail, it's get out of town and get up to high ground. But that's a whole lot different from, say, an earthquake or civil unrest, or the city water goes off. So there's a wide range of contingencies that we need to be thinking about. And but to have a clearly identified set of actions on the website, and then whatever type of outreach, this really would be more effective if every neighborhood was doing this, and we get TV and radio behind this, so that the wider public becomes aware of this whole community-wide campaign, so that when people start to see info, they can say, oh, that's right, I heard about that somewhere. So it's a big task, and it's great that somebody's here from Bethel, and I know Heather, Silicki, and Southeast. This really ought to be a city-wide project, and maybe we find out more neighborhoods are interested in doing this too. But if the whole city is involved with this, and every neighborhood has its chunk, then it's a huge task, and it's one that is really important too. We are not in a stable situation.
Thank you, Jan. I thank you for sharing that. And yes, I've been invited to join the Neighborhood Leadership Council's offshoot of emergency preparedness. So working with other neighborhood organizations is definitely a priority. And I hope to have Santa Clara join us at some point and get involved as well. Our neighbors, you know, we need to be able to, we need to communicate amongst ourselves, but also respect autonomy and allow folks to also do as they will, I guess. Each neighborhood has its unique issues. So I wouldn't want South Eugene telling us, you know, what was important and what not. So, and I respect that, you know, they have different issues than we do. So that being said, who else has a comment? Anyone leave a comment in the chat? Matt, I wanted to ask you about the radios because that's one of my favorite topics actually is and funding. Funding is a huge topic as well, and that's in the works. But we would like to get. There was an idea floating around that we would get a grant and purchase, you know, 10, 15 walkie-talkies or some kind of radio system that if we had an emergency, we could have these walkie-talkies already strategically placed and be able to, that are charged with the long battery if the lights go out, and be able to communicate amongst ourselves as we evacuate folks. So can you tell us more about how radio plays a role? I don't know if he's barely. There, I think that's better. Oh, it was better for a second.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
A little bit. Go ahead.
Okay. If you want to get together and purchase a bunch of FRS radios, go right ahead. My recommendation is the DeWalt FRS. What is it called? Let me think. The DeWalt DX FRS 800. I'll go ahead and type that in the chat.
Cool. What does that do?
That is a good one. That is a IP67 waterproof radio, kind of spendy. $80 per pair. So that's quite a bit, but that's the one I have.
Yeah.
The neighborhood hams in the area, they ideally should have an FRS radio of their own. The idea is that the CERT teams, the boots on the ground teams in the various neighborhoods will be able to talk directly to the neighborhood ham, and the neighborhood ham will relay it to a district ham, one in each quadrant of the city, and the 4 district hams will each convey their information directly to the EOC. Okay?
That's exciting. I don't know. I guess I'm kind of a nerd. I kind of like the thought of this stuff. And
what is it? Is this already in place? And what is the EOC, or is this just an idea?
God, it's hard to tell at this point. I originally proposed the idea to CERT, but they weren't very receptive to the idea. So now it's posted on the LaSaro website, the Lane County Sheriff's Amateur Radio Operators. And they think it's a CERT creation, and CERT thinks it's a LaSaro creation, so I'm not good at navigating bureaucracy. I'm just not.
I understand you 100%, and that's part of the reason why I feel like River Road community organization, we're capable of doing this work, and of course I've also heard that, you know, from different emergency response teams that I've heard good and bad from both sides. So when the community from Blue River and Vida went to Thurston High School and kind of like were running things on their own, doing the best they could, about 3 days after, okay, not just a few hours, but like 3 days afterwards, then Red Cross showed up and was pissed that this community had already done, like, set up everything for volunteers and donations, and the attitude was just really gross. And now, because of that interaction, that negative interaction with Red Cross and the communities up the Mackenzie, now those communities have created their own nonprofits, and because they don't want to work with Red Cross anymore, because they were treated poorly. Like,
Misty, you have about 5 more minutes.
so I want to have a very clear communication, also is the goal, with the other emergency response teams. So there isn't any hard feelings about who's doing what, and we're all on the same page. I want to avoid that as much as possible too, and the bureaucracy. So thank you. Any last questions or comments?
One thing worth noting is that in the original plan there are exactly two radio channels assigned per neighborhood association. Okay, and there are 24 neighborhood associations in the entirety of Eugene. Okay.
Yeah.
Each neighborhood association has one primary frequency and one backup frequency.
Okay.
Okay. And when you subdivide the entirety of the neighborhood into little divisions like you just showed on the previous frame there, that's where confusion sets in. Everybody, that's the one I'm talking about. Everybody thinks everybody wants their own radio and their own frequency, and it's just not feasible. All right, so what you have is
so anyone with, and maybe Matt, I thank you for being here, and I know it's frustrating to be put on the spot and try to come up with answers, but I'm just excited that you're here and that you have this knowledge, and hopefully I can get in touch with you soon, so you can be better prepared and teach us a little bit more about what how to use radio systems, what our alternatives are, stuff like that. Anybody else have any closing suggestions or remarks before we get cut off?
Brenda has her hand up.
Yeah, Misty, I sort of thought you would. I appreciate the work you're doing. Having lived in Lincoln County, the FEMA training that some of us at the hospital took, but it was county. There were county people that did that. All of the how to respond to an emergency was through the emergency response department of the county. And that did and coordinated much of what you seem to be talking about us starting. And as Matt was saying, one of the things that I'd really be aware of is in an emergency, the communication and the triage and knowing how to communicate with the people outside of the neighborhood is important.
So absolutely, I agree. And one of my biggest beefs is that when I'm working, and I know this is across the board, one of my biggest problems as a 211 operator trying to find out basic information and going to the big agencies and being like, hi, this is 211. Where are people supposed to be? And they're non-responsive. The information is not available. And so I currently am working with 211 Info, who has an emergency response person
Lisa,
in
you've
charge.
got several, excuse me, Misty, you have several hands up.
I just want to finish my sentence and then I'll stop. But yes, I
We're also
understand there are
running out
lots
of
of
time.
people. Okay, there are lots of people and organizations working on this, and I'm in communication with them, and they are not transparent though. And so that's one of the major issues with civilians doing their own thing, is that they are not transparent about how things are supposed to work. And so, and we can talk about this in another meeting as well. Sorry.
So what I suggest is we have come to the 8:30 hour, and if folks want to leave, you're welcome to. If you want to continue chatting for a little while longer, let's leave this open. So thanks to everybody who wants to move on. Those who want to stay, please do so. Great meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, John. I just wanted to add a quick note. I posted a link just now that takes you to the FEMA page, and they have a plethora of free materials you can order from that page.
Okay, thank you, Harry. I think Jan had his hand up next, and then Lisa's the other hand that I saw. Jan, you're muted.
Yeah, thanks, John. I just wanted to say I posted on chat information about the presentations, the Zoom presentations I've been making, and the links to YouTube. And I would just finish that by saying all these topics are closely related to what we're talking about right now, how to be more resilient, how to be more ecologically fitting into what the planet can put up with. And if you don't know, you can save the chat on your own computer, so you can have all that information on your own file too. You can save the chat. So I appreciate everybody being here. It's great. It's good.
Thanks, Jan. Lisa?
I just want to address the thought that Lane County already has this framework in place. Lane County was remarkably slow to respond to our recent holiday fire. It was our own people, led by actually one of our own neighbors here, Dan Isaacson, who has a degree in emergency management response, who led the response over at Silky Field for 4 days, putting things into place when the Red Cross did not show up.
Right.
When we asked for COVID thermometers, because we had people who evacuated from Blue River who had to come back from Portland because they'd been exposed to COVID, it took the Lane County Health Authority 3 days to come up with one thermometer. Our county does not have its act together. They have not been transparent. And that's why we as neighborhoods need to figure our stuff out while still applying pressure to the county to figure stuff out. So you would hope that their Office of Emergency Planning would have this together, but they do not. Just wanted
Thank you, Lisa.
Any other hands up? Okay, you want to wrap up?
Oh, Claire. I saw you, Claire.
You know, I gotta have the last word. I keep thinking that, you know, a couple years ago we had this big ice storm and electricity was out and everything. And when I think about most likely disasters in the neighborhood, that's what comes to mind for me. So if one comes up next week or whenever, that might be a good opportunity to try out some things like phone trees and checking on folks. So you might think about something simple and immediate that we could try out.
Ooh, that'll be fun.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your work on this.
Thank you all for being here.
Okay, folks, thank you for hanging in. Let's make great things happen.